Hey guys, Behrman here. It's a cold November night up here in the Mojave Desert. It's just after midnight, so it's the witching hour, which makes it a perfect time to do 3 questions. Tonight, ghosts, devil worshippers, and a bit of spooky paranormal happenings. We'll be right back. As always, I'd like to welcome everybody to the channel, and all my new subscribers, welcome to you too. Now, it's November, the wind is blowing, and the camera's shaking a little. I apologize for that, but let's see if we can get through it. And it is kind of chilly, so let's get right into it. All right, first question. Do you know of any good paranormal spots in the desert? And also, what are your favorite camping spots? Well, I thought about this a lot, and I actually sat down and tried to make a list, but it ended up turning into like a travelogue, and it got real boring real fast, so I junked it. And also, the truth is that in the desert, let's take the camping spots first. I love camping all over. A lot of people don't realize how big the Mojave is. They think, it's a little bit of sand along the highway. It actually covers 4 states. I mean, it's in part of California, part of Utah, Nevada, Arizona. And while there's huge parks like Death Valley and the Mojave Preserve, there's also miles and miles, hundreds of miles of government land in between them. And some of those spots are my favorite areas because it's the spot you're going through as you're going to someplace else, and sometimes you find things that are just you didn't even know they were there. So I love exploring all of it. I love camping in it. If you had to press me, in Nevada, I love the Valley of Fire. In California, obviously Death Valley, Mojave National Preserve, Joshua Tree's real cool. Over in Arizona and Utah, I've only really scratched the surface, so I really can't even give you much other than the national forests over there are really cool. Now, as far as the paranormal aspect, that's difficult because what is paranormal? Paranormal is a mystery. It's something that happens when you don't expect it, in a way you don't expect it, and where you don't expect it. So to be able to point to an area and say, hey, go out here and weird things are going to happen is lame. Now, yeah, you could go to Area 51, take your folding chair and go sit out by the wire and see if you can see anything at night. Or you could go to Giant Rock in California and, see what you can pick up there. I've got an episode coming out on Giant Rock, the supposed vortex and portal there, that's really pretty interesting. And if you do go there, I'll give you a quick tip. Go early in the morning when the sun comes up, because it's when the sun first hits that spot is when interesting things happen. But to my point, it's hard to predict that type stuff, because I could tell you one spot where someone had a weird occurrence, or I did, and you might go out there and it's as beautiful and calm as can be. And I've got 2 stories to kind of illustrate that point. One of my favorite spots that's a lot of people don't know about is the Old Woman Mountains down in the southern Mojave. And the Old Woman has a lot of old Indian lore to it, has miners, hunters. The biggest meteorite found in California was found down there like 60 years ago. And it's also where the Foil Men episode happened that I did, along a road called Power Line Road. Now, in the desert, in the backcountry, most of your roads are either a mining road, a hunter's trail, or power line roads that the utilities put in, because they run hundreds of miles of line out there. And you go down these roads, little dirt roads that go for miles, and that's where you stop, or you use them to jump off into the wilder spots where sometimes there's a trail, sometimes there's not. And it was along the Power Line Road in the Old Woman Mountains where, like I say, the Foil Men happened. Now, I've camped down along that route like 5 times, and nothing's ever really happened. Well, nothing's really happened. I mean, other than the beauty of the spot, I never had any weird occurrences. And I ran into a friend of mine who happened to buy 40 acres out there at a tax auction. Beautiful, pristine, really remote. And I told him I was thinking of going out there to do some camping and photography. He's like, oh, go camp on my land, get some use out of it. So he gave me the directions, and the directions are your classic desert directions of, go to the big rock, and then you'll see an old stump and turn left there, and there's some rusty barbed wire sticking out of the sand, and follow that for 100 yards and turn. So I went out there and took the girlfriend, and it took us a whole day to get to the spot. And it got dark before we could get to the trail part of it. So we just pulled off the power line road and camped. Nothing happened that night other than she drank too much and puked in the tent, which she'll kill me for telling you, but that was that night. So the next day we got up and went exploring. Yeah, we found the rock, found the wire, found the stump, got to his place. And it was beautiful. It was right up tucked next to the rocks in a little like enclave of huge boulders and a huge rock wall that went up like maybe 60 feet behind us. And we camped there for the night. This was in the summer. It was a full moon. It was gorgeous. And we didn't use the tent for obvious reasons. We just threw a blanket out on the ground and cowboy camped, under the stars. And it was great. Moon was out, no wind. It was warm. Had a great night's sleep. And in the morning, the sun came up right directly across from us, over like 100 miles of vacant land, just nothing there. Came up glorious. Your classic, what I love about the desert. Got in the Jeep, left. Now, I hadn't seen my friend for like 2 or 3 months, and I ran into him again, and I told him, oh man, thanks. Your place was awesome. I had a great time. I want to go back, next time I'm out there. And he's like, oh, dude, I had the most terrifying experience out there last week. I'm like, really, what? And he goes, well, I took my wife and kid and my old dog out there, and I went to my land. And it was cold that night, so they all slept in the truck. And there wasn't enough room for me, so I just threw a cot out next to it and, jumped into my mummy bag and zipped it up. And he goes, I zipped it all the way up past my face because it was just really cold. And went to sleep. He goes, it was maybe like 2:30 in the morning. He goes, I'm sleeping. And all of a sudden, I feel this like hand go right over my mouth and nose and like press down really hard. And he goes, I woke up because I'm like, am I dreaming? What's going on? And he goes, I could feel it pressing harder and harder. And he goes, I had the bag zipped up, so my arms are kind of like this, but I can still move my body. So I wasn't dreaming. And he goes, it just got more and more and more. And he goes, I started to have the total panic attack, like I'm suffocating. Whatever this is suffocating me. And he goes, I knew I had to do something. So I, as hard as I could, kicked and burst out. And he goes, I actually burst the zipper in my mummy bag, and I jumped up and got out. And he goes, there's nothing around. He goes, the moon was like only partial, but I could still see everywhere. He goes, I couldn't see anything. I grabbed my flashlight, shine it all over. Don't see anybody, don't see anything, don't see any tracks around me, nothing. He goes, and I go over to the truck, and my family's totally asleep, even the dog. And he goes, my dog will bark if there's a rabbit 100 yards away. He goes, so he didn't hear anything either. So whatever this was completely silent and left no physical traces. Now I asked him, there's something that happens called sleep paralysis, where you'll be in a half sleepy state, dream state, and you can feel like you're paralyzed, like you can't move, like something's sitting on you. So I asked him, do you think it was something like that? And he goes, no. He goes, at first I woke up, thinking I was having a bad dream. He goes, but I could feel this pressure, and I could still move he goes, I physically could move my arms and legs. So it wasn't like I had that paralysis. And jumped up, didn't see anything. So he goes, the whole rest of the night I sat out there with my gun freezing my butt off because my bag was ruined with the zipper ripped, and I didn't want to wake my family and freak them out. And in the morning, packed up and left. So there's an example of what I'm talking about. I could tell you to go to that spot and you'll have the most incredible, beautiful, starry night camping experience. And he could tell you that story where you go out there and God knows what happens or is going to happen or did happen. So that's why I can't really tell you with any degree of certainty great paranormal spots in the desert, because it could happen anywhere. It could happen anytime and in any fashion. So that's my answer. Long-winded answer to that question. I've watched your episodes on the satanic cult and the Charles Manson story. Have you ever encountered devil worshippers or cult activity in the Mojave? Yeah, I have. One time that I could definitely point to it being a cult or satanic in nature. Now, in the desert, there's lots of little cabins near more the inhabited fringes of the desert, because once you get out into the backcountry, you really don't see much as far as humans. But you see a lot of little cabins, and a lot of them are just tar paper shacks that are abandoned. And they'll be all over, and you wonder, like, what are all these shacks doing here? And it was from after World War I, the government offered veterans and other people land grant opportunities where if you came out and you built a little cabin and improved 5 acres, after 5 years they deed it to you. So a lot of poor people thought it was a way to actually own land and move up in life. The problem was they got out there and they found it's hot. There's no services. It's hard to make a living, and they abandoned them. So there's just scads of these abandoned cabins. And most of them have been weathered and ransacked and vandalized, so they're just shells, basically. But they're still cool to explore, because sometimes you find stuff you never expect, or you'll see evidence of the old pioneers or frontier life as it existed at that time. And I was out one day, and this was up near the open desert near Barstow, California. And if any of my viewers know Barstow, you'll probably go, yeah, that makes sense when I tell you what I found. So there was this cabin way off in the hills near the one road I was going down, dirt road. And I thought, well, I'll motor over there and see what's in it. So I went over and I parked, and there weren't any tire tracks. There weren't footprints. There looked like somebody maybe had been there a couple months ago, but with the wind and the rain, the footprints were more just indentations than anything clear. So I walked in, and like all these places, it was full of rat poop and pigeon droppings and all sorts of crap, and pretty much stripped out. And I walked into the second room, which was a lot bigger, and wham, one wall was painted completely black. And in the middle of it was a huge white pentagram. And in the middle of that was a crow, a desert raven, huge, huge bird that had been crucified in the middle of this pentagram. And, it was nailed up and it was hanging there, which on a personal note, devil worship and all that stuff, I think is really just an excuse for idiots to do cruel and senseless things. And to see such a cool animal, I personally love ravens, treated like that was shocking. But then on the wall all around it was written in white spray paint, all this misogynist threats and curses and women are effing bees, this, and, kill all bees. And, it was just really distasteful idiocy. And then there were like the remains of candles, like a lot of candles have been burnt on the cement floor around it, and some stuff written in chalk, which I couldn't really make out. And my first feeling was like, I would love to just light a match and burn this place, because this is just a magnet for lunatics. And I didn't really have a feeling of like, ooh, devil stuff, It was just more like idiots, senseless idiots. But when you find that stuff, you wonder what people are capable. And if you live in the desert, so many stories of they found bodies out there, or they found parts of bodies out there, or they found sacrificed animals out there. So you got to be careful. So I looked around some more at this place and went outside and did a 360 around it, looking for tracks to see if I could see if anyone had been there recently. And like I said, I couldn't see much. So I left it. I just got back in the Jeep and went, this is kind of a bummer. Like I say, locals, idiots, serial killers, I don't know. But they were definitely into that satanic crap. So that's my actual I saw devil worshiper activity in the Mojave story. All right, number 3. Have you ever seen a ghost? No, not like, hey, it's a ghost. I'll tell you one time that I did have kind of a weird experience. Now, I should say that ghosts, I don't know much about ghosts. I've done stories on them. I've explored stories about them. Maybe someone who knows more about the subject could tell me. I always wondered, like when I see or hear stories about people that see ghosts or a ghostly apparition that's in like 18th century clothing, or it's, in dark shawl or something. I'm always like, well, why is it dressed? I mean, if a ghost is supposed to be the spirit of a living being, or the life force, then why is it in clothes? I mean, did the clothes die too? Do they have spirits? What's all that about? I mean, I can understand, like, if someone goes, well, I saw orbs. I've so many mine stories out here. I've heard about people have seen orbs or weird lights at night, which, okay, maybe that's a life force. And I've actually got an episode coming on a real cool haunted mine, but it's a black dog that people see. And then the road ghost episode I did, which was, people would actually see females dressed, but with different ghostly aspects. So there's all that. And I've never really encountered that, so I can't really say. But one time I did have a weird experience in that, again, it involves one of these little weird cabins. I was out in the Mojave, and I driving along, and I saw this cabin way off on the hill, and it just, for some reason, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting spot. Most people try to put it down out of the wind or tucked back somewhere, but this was up on a little hill, and I thought, oh, cool, I'll go see what's in it. And I go over, and it looked like it maybe had been abandoned in the 1930s, 40s. But the cool thing about it was the wind was blowing, and there were curtains still in the one window that were like flapping in the wind, coming out through the cabin. And it looked real, picturesque and kind of creepy. So maybe that's why I wanted to check it out. I go over to it, park. It had the old metal tees where people used to put clotheslines and hang their clothes out. And the door was half ajar, so I had to force it to get in, which told me people hadn't been in there in a long time. And it still had like some rough furniture. It had like an old table, some chairs, a cheapo Formica top on these counters. And when I say counters, they were more like sawhorses with boards across them, with Formica sheet on it, and an old hand cranked washing machine, which I guess people sell those now. I just leave that stuff, but a lot of people do go out and collect that stuff to sell to collectors. And the place, it just had this overwhelming feeling of loneliness. Being on this little hill, overlooking what was basically barren scrub for miles and miles and miles, and the wind whistling through it. So these old tattered fabric curtains were flapping, and looking around in it, it looked like, with the washing machine there, and I'm trying to think there was like some silverware left in one of the buckets, but it was nothing good. I mean, it was cheapo tin stuff, and there was some drawings on the wall with looked like chalk or crayon of flowers, like a woman's touch, flowers trying to cheer up this place. And I just got this feeling of like sadness, of like loneliness. And I looked around a little more, and then I'm like, well, take some pictures outside and leave. I go outside. I'm going back to my Jeep. I had my camera bag on my hood, and I'm getting my stuff together. And I just got this feeling, sometimes you get a feeling like someone's looking at you or something's looking at you. And I turned around real quick, and for a split second, I saw, and I don't want to say like I saw it concretely, it's more like I imagined it, like some woman standing in that, what was the kitchen window, now open with the flapping curtains, just looking out, and she was dressed like real plain and just looked sad. And, I saw it for like that much, like, just like I say, it was more a thought than an actual vision. And I just wondered, like, wow, I wonder if, like, and this happens a lot, some guy dragged his poor wife out to live in the desert, and here they are in this godforsaken spot, and there's no color in her life, so she's drawing flowers on the wall and, looking out the window at nothing. There's no culture, there's no friends, there's no shopping, there's nothing. What a soul-crushing life that must have been for somebody. And I just had that feeling. I say it's the impression it left me with. And you could say it was ghostly, you could say it was spooky, whatever, but that was probably the closest I've ever had to like going like, I wonder if there was some entity still hanging around there that hadn't moved on. So that's my ghost story. It might not be too terrifying, but it made me think. So that's it for tonight. 3 questions. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're still with me. Didn't bore you to death. And I will see you next time.